Let's see. It should pop up. There you go. Got everybody. Everybody sees that screen. Mel, just nod if you see it. So what we're going to talk a little bit about today for the next 25 minutes or so is just really some of the new realities that we're all facing in our lives. Whether we are all in the direct marketing industry, either as a service organization working with business clients that are directly servicing consumers, or a direct-to-consumer company. We really all face the same issues and have a lot of the same questions. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the things that, as I mentioned, that we're seeing out there. Really no sugarcoating what's happened over the last couple of months, right? The headlines, have kind of been staggering about businesses closing, at the drop of a dime, sporting events being canceled, travel sector, parts of it may not recover. Business travel is a big part of all of our lives, and it's become a little bit of a personal decision for many of us. Video conferencing, things like this webinar, and how we interact with our customers, even how we interact with our coworkers, has just changed dramatically as we've all gotten comfortable with these concepts of doing video conferencing and teleconferencing. And the convention and trade show world has been turned upside down. We all know it's been a nightmare, right? And so we spend a lot of time over the last couple of months, especially in March and April, just sort of that gut reaction, like, what do we do next? And it's a lot of people, talking to a lot of people, they're still worried about obviously their own health and welfare, their families, their extended families, but it really is not at all selfish to think about how our livelihoods are impacted and how we need to change our livelihoods over the coming months and potentially years. It's part of our protecting our family's health and welfare is making sure that we can continue in our livelihood. And in the direct marketing profession, we've taken a massive impact, and so we do need to change some of the approaches that we take towards our customer bases. And we need to recognize some of the new realities and the new norms of the world so that we can make those adjustments. In terms of the impact, we've all felt it, right? And here in the ICS world and in many of your worlds, we live in the direct mail world. And so direct mail really, though, it is a pretty good barometer, and there's a good correlation to overall spend. So some numbers that just recently came out that I saw, painted the real picture of what we all feel, right? So across all sectors, we're seeing about a 33% drop in overall mail volumes, and really a 33% drop in total media spend. And this is across auto, finance, retail, about 12 different major sectors. Not all doom and gloom. Insurance has been a little bit of a bright spot. The second bar there, the lower bar, is insurance volumes for the last 13 months. Insurance has really held pretty steady. We know that particularly in some of the personal lines products, like term life providers, for example, have really seen a boom in applications over the last 3 months. One of the unfortunate, I guess, downsides is that a lot of people, sad to say, are just thinking about mortality. And again, it's protecting their families and thinking about what may happen when the next pandemic occurs, when someone's 15 or 20 years older, or their personal situation changes. So talking to a lot of companies in the term life space, they're seeing a massive boom in the number of applications and good quality applications that are coming through their system. So in insurance, looking across the 12 sectors, was really the only one of any of the major sectors that where the volumes held steady. So without insurance sector, kind of a more realistic picture, the remaining 11 of the 12 sectors are down 44% year over year, and about 35% just from March to April. So, we've all felt it, but, the numbers are really kind of playing out, where we expected them to see and where we think. So clearly, we're all thinking about, what comes next for our businesses. Again, whether we're managing campaigns that are direct to consumer or whether we're in the service sector, we're all feeling it and thinking about what has to change. So I want to talk about a few things. And primarily, we're going to come at this from a client perspective. We're a mail shop at ICS. And so but we want to think about, what our clients are facing and some of the things that our clients can do and are doing right now in the face of all of this change. And for those of us that are marketing service providers, I think it's really important that we understand the various industries that we serve and think about the challenges that those industries are facing. The more that we understand those challenges, I think the more it opens up opportunities for us to help those clients. So that's sort of where we're going to focus. And just to walk through the bullet points, and then we'll spend a few more minutes going into greater detail on some of these. We're going to talk about how, the short-term outlook on direct marketing and where most experts see things happening. We're going to talk a little bit about how clients are focusing on existing customers through a lot of different efforts. We'll talk about messaging and how that's changing and will continue to change in the coming months, as well as an emphasis just on good basic customer service. And all of that really sort of wraps up into the idea of now being a time to make your brand really kind of bulletproof to your consumer. So let's talk for a minute about the short-term outlook on direct marketing spend. Most experts predict that it's going to continue to be flat. May's numbers are already in the books. Obviously, we're almost through June, and I think when numbers come out, we'll see May, June, and likely into July and August continuing to be relatively flat for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is that there's so many changes that are shifting in the economic landscape, not just health related, but now we have, massive societal reforms that are happening and that are shaping how we sell and how we communicate. So as that landscape starts to stabilize in the next few months, marketers are going to take that opportunity to sort of recraft their messaging and get some testing out into the marketplace. One of the things that we stress with our clients is that it's really important to stay in tune with some of the key indicators as we all determine the best times to resume prospect marketing. And again, that goes for business to business clients. We talk every week at ICS, when's the right time to really start, talking to prospects again about new programs and about potentially making a change in the service provider. And we all, even our direct to consumer clients have that same question. When do we really resume that prospect marketing? When's the right time, for a lot of reasons? And some of the main things that we're looking at and that our clients are looking at to determine how and when to come back, we see three main indicators. Obviously, the continued spread and potential for a second wave of COVID-19, everybody's watching. And all of us, it really should be a pretty important part of our day is checking the news cycles, right? Understanding what's happening out there in the different states, understanding the states that we operate in, where they are in terms of their recovery, where they are in terms of things reopening, because all of that has a very big impact into when we make decisions to get back into the marketplace. So it really behooves all of us to stay in touch with that information. Whether it's through the CDC or whether I found a lot of great information just by going on individual state websites and getting it right from that source. But we should know kind of where different states are in terms of the virus. Another major indicator obviously is jobs and wages, right? So there's a pretty big point at the end of July when the current version of the CARES Act expires and the additional federally granted unemployment, bonus money to consumers on unemployment runs out. The the addition of that, extra $600 or up to $600 given by the federal government, in a lot of people's opinions, has created a balloon in unemployment. That combined with that, this is the first time that independent contractors and the self-employed have been able to file for unemployment benefits. Wages are still pretty strong because of that additional money, and so we should see a stabilization and kind of really get to reality of what the true unemployment picture looks like once that additional CARES Act money runs out at the end of July, unless I know there's some talks about it being continued, which will kind of continue to throw a monkey wrench in terms of consumer demand for different products. But so kind of watching that and watching what happens with jobs and wages, and consumers' ability to pay for product at the end of July and into August is really going to be a key indicator. Obviously, in the consumer finance sector, a lot of our clients are watching delinquency rates. One of the things that, anecdotally, that most of them are reporting is that consumers are making pretty smart decisions. Consumers who are unemployed are not tapping heavily into credit lines. They're not applying for loans when they know that they're unemployed and maybe can't pay it back. So delinquencies have not necessarily spiked in many industries the way that people thought they had, because wages are still relatively strong. We'll see what happens in August, but that's kind of a barometer point that a lot of people are looking at. And then one of the other major factors is what's going to happen with schools, both at the elementary and the secondary level. That's going to have a big impact in terms of people's ability to go back to work if they can, right? A big part of the unemployment picture right now is individuals who could work. Their job is still there, but they need to be home caring for children, because daycare and schools have been closed and they can't do their job from home. So exactly how much is a little bit of an unknown, but as soon as schools can open up, it's going to create that additional wave of individuals that can go back to work and get back into the economy. So seeing what's going to happen with schools nationally and regionally, and on a state-by-state basis, and even more granular on a county-by-county basis, is really one of the other critical things that a lot of our clients are watching. Let's talk about focusing on existing customers for a moment. Right now, at a time when we can't go out, and again, B2B, B2C, doesn't really matter. When we can't go out and find new customers, we certainly can't afford to lose the longstanding customers that we have built up a relationship with. We saw in March that existing customer programs in marketing spend jumped to 19% of total spend. And I would anticipate May numbers being even higher. March is a bit of a hybrid. A lot of campaigns, prospecting campaigns, were out the door or well planned before that mid-March slowdown. So I think we're going to see a massive jump in terms of the percentage of overall media spend and marketing spend volume as we look at April and May numbers. One of the key things that we're seeing clients do in that focus on existing customers is to integrate personal experiences and make a really strong personal connection with those existing customers. And I want to give you a good example. We saw PNC Bank, and we saw a lot of banks mail campaigns to get existing customers using their self-serve portals, their online portals, because obviously their branch offices were closed. So to increase enrollment, what PNC Bank did was they integrated a QR code on a mail piece that launched a very down-to-earth, very homegrown video tutorial that was filmed by, they had about 100 different customer service representatives film individual tutorials on how to sign up for online banking and how to use different components of online banking. So it was tremendously successful for them in terms of enrollment, but it created that bond with a real person, right? Not an actor, not someone that was kind of, cold and stiff, but a real person. These were employees that filmed these, and so they're talking to them in the customer's language, and it was very successful for them. we see a lot of marketers trying to figure out, what their messaging is going to look like. A question that got posed to me about a month ago is, should we even address the virus and COVID in the marketing material? And I'm not really sure that that we need to be overt in that messaging. But as we transition to new customer acquisition strategies, again, it goes down to understanding where the states are, right, and where they are in their recovery, and the messaging should be on point based on segmentation. Again, using financial services as an example, we do a lot of work in that space. Typically, messaging in the May-June timeframe is focused on, using a loan to pay for summer vacation, and then you've got back to school expenditures. That clearly is not the right message right now, because nobody's taking that European vacation. I mean, nobody's taking it. Very few people are going to be traveling, to even domestically very heavily. So it's different things. We're seeing different needs for services like home improvement, which we'll talk about a bit more. But we're seeing large. About 20 years ago, when we had sort of a similar crisis after 9/11, one of the things that became very popular in marketing was a term called cocooning, where you were just seeing more and more consumers deciding to stay home and do things in their home. It's actually the time in the early 2000s when the term staycation started to become popular. Nobody wanted to travel overseas for a few years. People were deciding, I'm going to take my vacation right here in my backyard, or I'm going to go to some of the small towns near me. There was a real resurgence in smaller rural towns that had attractions nearby. I was reading an article that that's kind of when Saratoga, New York had a massive influx of people coming up to Saratoga, and it sort of rebuilt the town because that was a more desirable place to go than maybe traveling overseas. And so I think we'll see more of that. We'll see more investment in people's homes, upgrades in terms of maybe home theaters, outdoor living, as people choose to stay in smaller groups and stay at home. So, HELOC loans should continue to do well, and maybe just that overall emphasis on using products for things like home improvement. There's the viral impact is going to have big societal changes, but a lot of the other things that are happening in society with social justice are creating changes unlike anything that we've seen in close to 50 years. And those changes historically have always had a big impact on how we communicate to consumers. So we have to understand our data, look at the data points, understand who those customers are, what they do, how they live, and there's plenty of tools to be able to communicate to them effectively and very specifically. Kind of continue on the trend about talking about focusing on customer service or focusing on our existing customers. Now is not the time to decrease ease of access in terms of how you serve your customers. Matter of fact, now is a great time to invest in better customer service tools, whether it's online chat, online video, just making sure that a website, self-serve website is really easy to follow and very intuitive. Our consumers are faced with a lot of new stresses. They've always had stresses of their health and their jobs, but now there's added stress of, working from home while they're trying to teach their child algebra. There's figuring out daycare. There's worrying about an elderly parent. And so now is the time when trusted brands and service providers have to be exactly that. They have to be trusted. One of the things that we talk with our clients about is not servicing our customers in the same way that we always have, right? Now's the time to sort of expand the way they serve them. And as a kind of an example, I want to talk about some retail businesses. And I'm just going to give, for the people on the call who know me, I'm a little bit neurotic about, customer service and service levels. But there's so many really simple things that businesses can do to understand their customer and make it a little bit easier for them to do business with them. And I'm going to give you a really, just a personal example, but I think a really good one. Everything was closed, right, from March until the end of June. And as businesses started to reopen, they're opening with restrictions. Primarily, one of the most common is the restriction on how many customers can come into an establishment at any one given time. And so you think about the medical profession, right? And so dentists are backed up. It was 2.5 months where people could not get routine dental care. Most doctors' offices are closed one day a week. Typically, very often doctor's office closed Monday, Wednesday, or a Friday. The dentist that I go to has always been closed every Friday. And so, I called to make an appointment, couldn't get one until August because, of course, even after they've been closed for 2.5 months, they're still closed every Friday. So it just sets a bad precedent to say, look, we're not really here to serve you. We're here to serve you at our convenience. So it's those little things that you can make an adjustment, recognize that, hey, maybe I should open up 5 days a week so those people who are backed up and getting to see me in some of those personal services businesses can see me. And it's thinking about how our customers interact with us and thinking about how can I make a change to make it a little bit easier for them is going to go a long way in continuing our relationship with those customers. And all of this kind of rolls up into the concept of making your brand bulletproof. A lot of people think when they think brand and brand strength, they think about the large companies, right? You don't have to be AT&T to have a strong brand. Your brand, no matter what the size of your company or what the type of service that you provide to your customer, your brand is important in the eyes of your consumer. And in a time of crisis and uncertainty, when so many other things in your customers' lives are uncertain, customers are less likely to switch brands in those times of uncertainty. A lot of research tells us that over the years, but they will switch brands if you give them a reason. Okay, I'm switching dentists, by the way. But real easy. So whether you're selling business to business or business to consumer, now is not the time to make those small mistakes that might drive away your customer. And now is not the time to think kind of arrogantly, my customer doesn't have the ability to go out there and look for another provider. So I'm not going to go above and beyond in terms of providing them service. Now is the time to really double down on that level of service and lock in that brand reputation that you've built up with your customer. I'm going to shift gears for a minute and talk a little bit about some of the things that we've seen, some of the trends that we've seen in mail, and one of them is really clearly the continuing growth in digital integration with offline channels. And so it's something that we've been talking about with our customers for a long time, but some really startling, but not surprising. And you can take the numbers back, throughout 2019, you were right around 90% of all direct mail pieces integrated some kind of a mobile tag, primarily a QR code or other device, in with their direct mail. April, that number jumped up to very close to 99%. And so clearly it was that shift of moving people away from retail and away from brick and mortar transaction activity and into online, right? It was born out of necessity. But one thing that typically we see when things like that are born out of necessity is that consumers get very comfortable with it. And so you see that dramatic shift. And that's kind of one of the things that I think is going to be an outcrop of everything that's going on is we're going to continue to see that. We're going to take that next step in terms of the divide between online commerce and brick and mortar commerce. I personally think that a lot of brick and mortar industries are going to really struggle to regain their footing as consumers change their lifestyles. We're going to talk about some of the other things in a moment that are changing, they're going to drive that divide even further. So We saw that jump in mail pieces. And the way that consumers, or the way that marketers are using that digital integration is in a lot of ways, and the ways that we can use it, are evolving rapidly. As I mentioned with PNC Bank, clients are launching product tutorials. They're using that video to really, physically connect with their customer base. In a lot of solicitation pieces, using those links to launch pre-filled pages, linking more and more elements, not just name and address from your data source, but linking more elements about what you know about the consumer from your data set. Customers are getting a little bit more comfortable knowing that businesses know something about them beyond just their name and address. So there's a lot of ways you can do to suggest information that you know about them, that says, do you still work at XYZ company? And so it's less information that the consumer has to complete in kind of a really comfortable way. Obviously, we're seeing people, leverage click-to-call, click-to-chat functions to immediately start engaging with the consumer from a mail campaign. We're also seeing an awful lot of really cool innovations in terms of integrating with digital assistants, whether it's Alexa or the Google Home Assistant. I'm not sure what its name is, but we're seeing a lot more ways to integrate with those digital assistants that have become so commonplace in our homes. And again, it's any way that we can start engaging with the consumer a little bit faster is going to give our campaigns a little bit of a boost in overall performance. As I mentioned, we've been talking about digital integration here at ICS for about 1.5 years. And, digital integration with a mail piece is just continuing to evolve, going from the old days from a single channel to multi-channel and sort of silos to cross-channel, just being able to market to a consumer across multiple platforms. Where we are right now, sort of in that evolutionary life cycle, is really truly in that omni-channel approach, right? Where we can target a consumer and be able to reach them in all of the media that they consume, and do it in a really well-constructed, well-orchestrated, well-timed pattern that overall, lifts the brand awareness and ultimately lifts response to our campaigns. Where we're starting to see that evolution move to is what we refer to as omnichannel, right? It's finding the right consumers that react to the right blend of media. So, whereas you can surround a consumer today with all of the different media they consume, we can continue to learn from that and partition out, segments of consumers that are best with a certain combination of media, and then just continue to optimize that complete spend that we are making around a consumer to get the response that we're looking for. So again, we're just going to continue to see that evolution happen over the next several months and several years. So the bottom line in all this, there's just if I can leave you with a couple of takeaways. The first and foremost is that we know that the economy is going to rebound, right? And it's a matter of when. It's a matter of keeping our eye on some of the major indicators. And marketing to new consumers will resume at some point, more than likely sooner rather than later. By most estimates, a lot of major consumer marketers are going to be back, pretty close to full throttle by sometime in the fall, whether that's September or October. Obviously, again, keeping an eye on any potential second wave of the virus, but that's kind of where most people's heads are at the current time. Again, we're stressing to our clients that there's a need to stay in the market to understand its movements. And this is not a suggestion that's born out of just our desire to have them, mailing or in some other media that we work with. But we just recognize that it's important to continue to talk to that prospect base, to understand their evolving needs, their evolving situations personally, and oftentimes the best gauge to that, especially in a business to consumer world, is to stay out there. Use the right selections in your models so that you're picking up different segments. So you understand kind of where any segment is at any one given time, so that when the doors are ready to be open, you know exactly how your customer is going to react. The other takeaway is that we know that products and services are going to adapt and adjust as consumer behaviors change. And the one thing that we know is that we're going to see there's so many things happening right now that are going to cause a massive, cultural shift in the way that consumers are behaving. Just to talk about three of them really quickly, the entire work from home concept, right, is going to have a dramatic downstream impact on a lot of sectors, and the way that customers consume media. Saw some numbers in October of last year. Roughly 7% of the U.S. workforce worked remotely for at least part of their time at work. Most experts are saying, economic experts are saying, that number is going to be at least 22% of people will be working from home. A lot of Fortune 500 companies are saying that as many as 30 to 40% of their workforce will stay at home permanently. Again, anecdotally, was talking to someone who is a partner with one of the big four, I guess now, accounting firms, and he told me that 50% of their workforce will not be coming back to work. And so you think about all of the things that we do as consumers, where commuting to work and going to an office is part of our daily lives. We're stopping for coffee, we're buying more gas, we're listening to podcasts, consuming audio on the way to work, whether that's in a form of broadcast radio or satellite radio. Those patterns are going to change dramatically. When people stay at home, there's a big shift. Obviously we saw a big shift with people not going into supermarkets, people purchasing, getting takeout, getting delivery, a big surge in that. There's a big surge right now in people doing more cooking from home. Again, over the last 2 months, because they couldn't go out, but now it's going to be because they're working from home. And so they're not stopping to pick up dinner on the way home. So we could spend a whole 45 minutes talking about the different impacts of what that work from home shift is how it's going to dovetail into our world. But those are things that we need to think about. Where are our consumers, and how are they going to be consuming the media that we put in front of them? Obviously, the business travel is another big change. It's going to be dropping dramatically. And so how we sell in this world, for many of us who are service providers and selling direct business to business, the way that we do it is going to change. It's going to be things like this. But I guarantee that in about 2 years, we're all going to look back and say, can you believe that we had 40 people just on a Zoom call? The technology is going to change dramatically. And again, things like, internet bandwidth strength from the major ISPs is going to change dramatically, because people's need to consume that with heavy video usage is going to change. So a lot of downstream impacts there. And then the other, major thing that I see as affecting consumer behaviors in the long run is education, right? Both secondary and post-secondary. The way that education services are going to be delivered is going to change for a very large percent of the people who are consuming those services. There's, obviously there's going to be more people enrolling in online classes at the major traditional universities. That's going to change the way that we interact with individuals in an on-campus setting. There's a large increase in the number of students who are deciding to forego college for a short period of time, taking a gap year due to some uncertainty. But there's a lot of studies that say those people don't really come back and do it very often and do a traditional 4-year college program. That's going to change the nature of the person who comes into our workplace. And just the overall idea, whether, life on, say, college campuses is going to be very different, certainly in the short run. And that's going to change the way that those students view the world, and ultimately change the way that they view marketing and that we need to view them. So that's going to be a big long-term change that we see coming out of all this. And then finally, the winners out of all this are going to be the companies that recognize those new customer patterns early and figure out ways to respond to them. I want to leave everybody with this quote that I found, that the economy needs marketing and it needs marketers. And one of the things that we learned is that in a crisis, marketing is critical, whether it's online marketing, offline. Marketing drives all forms of commerce, right? No matter what the type and shape that might take. More importantly, it's what a lot of people lean on for inspiration during crisis times. You look at the messaging in March and April, it was very much around healthcare. Now all of your major consumer brands are talking about their role and their position towards societal change. It becomes something that a large group of consumers lean on for a little bit of security. Again, it's that trusted brand relationship. And I read this quote and I thought it was really appropriate, but what made me like it even more is, interestingly, it came from the same source as some of those quotes I had on that very first slide. And I can guarantee that almost everybody on here thought that all of those headlines were from March of this year. And if you thought that, you were wrong. This quote and those quotes at the beginning were in Ad Age in October of 2001. And so back in March, when the whole world changed, one of the common questions that people would say, or common phrases, was, "I've never seen anything like this." And the best thing that I can remember in my work lifetime is how we all reacted in our jobs after 9/11, which was a much shorter duration issue, but it changed dramatically the way that we communicated and the way that we lived our lives. And so, to me, that's the best, the best analogy to what we're going through now. And as we did then, things will recover, right? Consumers will start buying again. We know that from history. It's our job as marketers to adapt and find new ways to market and serve those consumers, and we all will. Thank you. Open for questions and answers. Or questions. I don't know if I have the answers. Mel, are you with us?
Yes. Has any?
Hey, Dennis. Tim Hughes here from TPG. Thanks so much for the presentation. Very informative information that you provided here. And I think the one thing that stood out for me was your experience with the dentist office, and how companies and businesses need to really change and adapt how they deal with their customers. Unfortunately for you, it wasn't a good experience. For me, my wife and I, we both had dental emergencies, believe it or not, through this COVID environment. And our dentists were able to accommodate and work around our schedules. So that was a good experience for us. But you're right. I mean, companies need to change their process and their way of thinking on how to deal with these customers.
Yeah, I think it's using a common sense approach mixed with some empathy towards where your customer is, and then realizing you need to make a change and adapt to that.
Well, good luck with your search on
there you go. Thanks, Tim. I'll call you.
Questions?
Thank you, Dennis.
Thanks, Mel. Thanks, Lisa.
Excellent presentation, great information. Really appreciate you taking the time. So, does anyone else have any questions? No?
Thank you all very much.
And this was recorded as well, so we'll be able to post this, which was great. So thanks. Good stuff.
Right. Thanks, Lisa. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good day, everyone.
you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.